minute's silence following the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. I think Sharon will continue the timing, so if we begin the meeting with that due protocol, colleagues. Thank you. Okay, thank you, colleagues. If we can then, first of all, move on to item 1 on the agenda, report for apologies of absence. And Eamon, can you note, or Sharon, can you note Councillor Merrick's apologies? Item 2, are there any declarations of interest for this morning's business? No, thank you. Moving on then to item 3 and the joint consultative report, or minutes of the meeting of the 11th of February, really just for noting. Are there any comments on that report, colleagues? No, thank you. I'm happy to note that is a true reflection of the meeting of the 11th of February. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda and the review of the strategic risk register and risk management process. The report, I presume, Lorraine, or is it Jill?
Jill will take us through it, but I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Morning, Jill. Happy to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The report in front of you provides the latest annual update of the Council Strategic Risk Register and a summary of the risk management progress. The previous update of the Strategic Risk Register was considered by the Cabinet on the 24th of September 2020 and recently on the 18th of March by the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. The Strategic Risk Register, included as Appendix 1, sets out the key strategic risks to be considered by the Council and details the actions that management have put in place to manage these risks. Since the Strategic Risk Register was considered by the Cabinet, a thorough review of all risks on the register has been undertaken, and the updates can be summarised as 12 risks remaining as high, 4 risks were rescored from high to medium, 10 risks were added to the register, no risks have been removed at this point, and 10 risks retained the same score as before, but the risk descriptions have been amended to reflect the current position or provide further clarity. Within the report, a risk tolerance map is included and the risks set out by outcome. The corporate management team continues to discuss and review the Strategic Risk Register on a regular basis, and it remains a standing item on the CMT agenda. The Strategic Risk Register is reported every 6 months to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee and annually to the Cabinet. In summary, as part of the review of the Strategic Risk Register here, there are now 42 risks on the register, of which 17 are classed as high. The Cabinet is asked to consider the development of the Council Strategic Risk Register, noting that it is considered a live document and will be updated and amended by the corporate management team as appropriate. Thank you very much. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Jill, and thanks for all of the work in pulling all of this together. We know it is very much a live document, and clearly there have been some significant changes in that and increased risks due to what we have been facing for over the past year now. But happy to note that they are all now included on the risk register. And it continues to evolve on that basis. Happy to open it up for any comments, colleagues? No? Are we happy then, colleagues, that we continue to monitor the Council's risk register, noting that it's considered a live document and is obviously subject to change, and it will be updated by the corporate management team as appropriate and brought to Cabinet in due course. But thank you everyone for the support in that. Thank you. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, the mixed tenure scheme. So Mr. Cahill, are you covering this, or Mr. Corey? Andy.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of the report is really to seek the Cabinet's approval to bring in-house the current mixed tenure scheme. If you recall, there was a full report to the Cabinet in January 2021 because the tender had been overlooked and had expired actually in 2019. So it was for COVID reasons and whatnot, so explained in the previous report. So in essence, the Cabinet at that time, they'd noted that the contract had expired due to an oversight and subsequent coronavirus issues, and they approved the continued use of that contract up until the 31st of March 2021, which was going to be extended under the previous terms and conditions and the tendered rates that had been tendered at that time. The proposal then at that point in time was that we would re-tender to run from 31st March 2021. So during the process of developing that tender documentation, we gave further consideration to what the actual options would be available to the Council and took that opportunity to analyse them. So that involves not only the financial cost of the performance, but also the effectiveness, efficiency and the strategic benefits which the various options could potentially provide. So as I said, we carried out an options appraisal. The first option was to cease delivering the contract, and I think it would be widely acknowledged that the scheme's been a huge success. It's been really highly valued by both elected members and local residents, and it's also provided many social benefits, including economic and employment benefits. To terminate the service would clearly be totally unpopular with all our residents and customers, and I think it would just be a backward step in relation to the Council trying to achieve its other objectives, its strategic objectives. Option 2 was to go to the market on a competitive tendering basis. Again, we gave this further thought. So re-tendering, that would allow the Council obviously to test the current marketplace to see if better value could be obtained. But however, we have to recognise that the previous tender exercise we did in something like 2015 didn't elicit multiple bids, and the nature and scope of that work hasn't really changed in the interim, and I'm not sure whether the range of potential bidders appears to have increased in that period of time, so a similar response might be likely. But beyond that, it's also important to note that the Council rules on the financial standing of bidders has changed since the original tender process to protect the Council, and smaller businesses such as this one may struggle to qualify as potential bidders for any new contract. However, I think an important point to be aware of here is even if bids are received through a tendering exercise and someone else, a new provider, won it, they would have to take on through the 2P regulations the existing workforce, the relevant workforce, so that would add a burden to their bid, in all likelihood raising the contract price or putting them off from tendering because of the 2P implications. So there's a risk there to the Council that going through a tendering process may result in no tenders being received, or they might be received at significantly higher price reflecting the bidder's perception of the financial risks associated with a 2P transfer. If those circumstances evolved then and no tenders were received, it wouldn't be possible to continue to deliver the service, and I'm sure the Cabinet would understand that. I would also suggest that there's a concern that given the economic, social and employability factors and benefits that this scheme has provided, that a new third-party supplier might not bring that same level. And the current contract has been very tailored towards a local need and local demand and flexibility. Some of the larger contractors may not have that flexibility. So given all those basic concerns, we gave further consideration to the possibility of bringing the service in-house and run it directly by the council. So it would be possible to do that and to transfer the existing relevant staff employed by the contractor Verge through the current contract into direct employment with the council. And my proposal is that they would be located and managed within housing services. Housing services currently run the contract with Verge anyway. So as I say in the report, bringing that service in-house would trigger TUPE, and we would have to take on the existing staff complement in the same way as any other contractor that won the contract would do it. I think the benefits in terms of the analysis of bringing the service in-house would allow us to maintain key benefits and services. Terms and conditions provided by the council as an employer might result in some salary cost increases along with other employment related liabilities, but I'm reasonably confident at this point in time that we can move around resources within the allocated sum of £500,000 a year that we have to run that to be able to manage those adjustments. I've highlighted in paragraph 22 to try to capture some of the potential advantages and benefits that I believe that the bringing the service in-house would provide in relation to knowledge, reputation, responsiveness and social responsibility. I pointed out some things that the current scheme have built up considerable experience and knowledge of a wide range of council services and how the council operates, which is always an important thing in dealing with contractors. They've established really good relationships with our local residents. They've dealt efficiently and effectively with a whole range of problems relating to fly tipping, litter picking, stuff like that. But really importantly for me, they've added value to the local economy and our other council strategic objectives. We've provided training and they've created and sustained employment almost exclusively for local people, and that includes, importantly, some of our care experienced young people. That's part of the council's family firm initiative that some of you will be aware of. They've provided really helpful in terms of helpful support in terms of trying to respond to the pandemic through helping out other departments such as driving and delivering and stuff like that. And they've been really flexible in supporting the council when other things have arisen as well. I do believe that if we bring the service in-house, we don't have the artificiality of a contract in between us. It would allow us much more flexibility about how we could deploy and develop that service in terms of its direct links to employability, young people, things like that. And it would also provide additional employment security to the existing staff, who I think number about 10, 11, 12, and almost all of them are local, live locally. So in terms of summarising in relation to best value, I think that given the above option appraisal is outlined in the paper, that the best option in terms of best value is to bring the service in-house. That will help avoid uncertainty, as I've tried to explain to you about any future service provision, provides continuity, and also avoids potential additional cost of going to the market. So in essence then, in terms of taking all those things into account, I think best value is best represented and achieved through bringing the service in-house. In terms of the consultation, there's been full consultation with our legal services, procurement and housing and HR colleagues regarding it. I think the conclusion that I reach is that the mixed tenure scheme has been a really great resource. And I think in order to support key council services, the best option available to the Cabinet would be to agree to bring it in-house, so we avoid all the other things that have the risks that I've outlined in the report I tried to explain to you today. So what I'm asking really is that the Cabinet agree for us to extend the contract for a further few months on the same terms and conditions as you did agree in January, to allow us to carry out the process that involves various certain things under the TUPE regulations, to bring them in-house and to delegate to me and the Chief Officer, our Chief Legal Officer, and the Deputy Chief Executive from the HR perspective to make the arrangements for the transfer. And really that's it in conclusion. I'm happy to try and take any questions. I know it's a rather long explanation, but it's quite a complex issue.
Very much, Andy, for that explanation, and thanks for bringing the paper forward. From one point of view, I'm delighted to see the paper, and I very much welcome the opportunity to bring the staff into the council and the fully fledged council staff. I think going back to the early days when we were unsure of being able to fund the service and support it on an ongoing basis, that was the reality at that point in time. But I very much welcome the work that has been done. I think over the years since it's been in operation, we are more than aware of the success of the team in delivering many services across a number of the estates within East Renfrewshire and beyond, in terms of delivering not just the close cleaning aspects, but the general maintenance and tidiness of our estates is now significantly better than it had been. So I very much welcome the team that we still have, but the opportunity to bring it in-house, I think, is far better, not just for the team and for the future ongoing work that will be carried out, but for the staff as well, who have shown themselves to be committed to delivering the services that have been required of them. So very much in favour of that, and happy to open the paper up for any additional comments.
Tony.
Danny, on you go.
Thanks, Tony. Just to echo your own words, Tony. I mean, what a difference, you know, the mixed tenure team have made to estates within East Renfrewshire, not just Bardhead, but, you know, parts of the Mearns as well, parts of Thornley Bank. I mean, you're right what you're saying. I mean, 7-8 years ago, I mean, you walked into these estates, you've seen the, you know, the debris lying about, you've seen the unpainted closes, you've seen the deprivation of fences and basically the estates. And what a difference the mixed tenure scheme has made to these estates. And I'm delighted to see it being brought back in-house.
Yeah, thanks, Danny, much appreciated. Okay, if there are no other comments then, colleagues, I'll be happy then with the recommendations that we agree for the reasons detailed in the report in relation to best value, which I think clearly has been established that this is an option and that there are, you know, savings in some respects, that we don't have the cost of going out to procurement, but what we actually retain are good quality staff who have been working with us and who are delivering excellent services. So we accept the best value aspect of it. We note the relevant employees from Verge will transfer to the council as employees through TUPE. We agree to extend the contract for a few months on the same terms and conditions and rates and within the existing budget as noted in the 28th of January report until the transfer can take place, which will be done as quickly as possible. And note that there are no financial implications at this stage since budgetary provision already exists for the delivery of the scheme, and note that delegates delegate the Director of Environment in consultation with the Chief Officer of Legal and Procurement and the Deputy Chief Executive to make the necessary arrangements for that transfer. Are we happy with those recommendations, colleagues? Okay, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 6 on the agenda and the garden waste charging proposal. And again, this is an update on the paper that was the announcements that we made during our budget, when clearly as a budget it was supported by all councillors to be taken forward. And Mr. Cahill, are you able to provide that update for us?
Thank you. This, as you say, is simply an update. The council has already agreed to implement a garden waste charging scheme. So what I was really asking for today was that you note the detailed further information, because I did say that we would come back with further details. And I can say that we're currently still working on the frequently asked questions, but I'll come on to that in a minute. And basically what I was asking today was for the Cabinet to approve the commencement date of the 7th of June. However, I have to caveat that. As we've been working through things recently, one of the elements of the scheme is to have online payment processing available. And as members of the Cabinet will know, many residents and customers expect that level of service to be provided. Now, they want to be able to pay online. They don't want to get involved in sending in checks or setting up this or whatever sort of thing, or having to correspond. However, we're having to, just recently we've been having a few questions, a few glitches is the word I would probably use, in relation to the online payment system. And I just want to be sure with my IT colleagues who are working on it as we speak, that it will definitely be able to operate effectively and efficiently to provide the level of service that our customers would expect. And what I'm asking today is that instead of going for the 7th of June, that we go for the 5th of July as the implementation date, which allows us just that little bit of extra time to be prepared, and particularly in relation to testing the online service solution. That was a previous comprehensive report, etc. Some of the things I've just highlighted here, I'll bring in Andy after this, if that's okay. That our current arrangements, just things I wanted to draw to your attention. Our current arrangements are very, very high in terms of the quality of the service that we provide, mainly the number of weekly collections compared to many other councils. However, I think we have to acknowledge that the service does come under real pressure during the summer months due to the sheer volume of the waste produced. So this proposal will generate income for the council, but at the same time, it will allow us through additional staffing, and don't forget that means job creation, and the addition of further refuse collection vehicle for the scheme to be totally improved in terms of reliability. So that will result in 3 new operational posts, frontline staff. There has been a lot of concern expressed as we've talked this through regarding the potential abuse of the scheme and also for increases in fly tipping. We've spoken to 2 other councils now in detail regarding their implementation of the scheme, and they said that basically they had listened to all similar concerns, and once they implemented the scheme, none of this actually transpired. It didn't happen. So I've outlined in paragraph 10 some of the key points about the scheme. I'm not going to go through them in detail, other than obviously the implementation date. I'm asking for 5th of July instead of 7th June. And we've done it in we've tried to do it in a sort of frequently asked questions format that I think Andy and his team are currently working with comms on, constantly honing it and refining it so that most people will be able to get any information they want online. And really, that's all that I'm asking for today, and I'm happy to open it up to any questions or any details, and I've got Andy here who will be able to help and answer detailed questions about any particular element of the scheme. That was it, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Andy, and indeed, Andy, for all of the work that you've done in bringing it to this stage. We are aware that this is an update document, and a huge amount of background work has been going on in order to try to look towards delivering this service and delivering the improved service, particularly over the summer months. So that's very much appreciated. Happy to open it up, colleagues, if there are any questions.
Tony.
Danny.
Okay, come on, yeah.
Yep.
Just a question in the communal bins. Who will pay for the lifting of the communal bins?
The communal bins will be paid by one person, presumably within the department setup, and we will lift it if it's paid. It'll be up to, in a communal setting, for people to pay that person who takes responsibility for ownership of the bin.
No, I mean, what if nobody takes responsibility for the ownership? I mean, it's like tenemental properties, Andy. You know the problems we've got with lifting bins for tenemental properties. And if you've got one participating in a block of flats with 8 residents in it, and the other 7 don't participate, you're going to have one person paying for 8 people. How can we, separate that?
Well, if one person is taking a bin on, we'd lift their bin and their bin only. If it's a common, they would have to be separated out. If nobody wants to take it on, we can supply an individual bin for one resident of that tenemental setup. So
the communal bins will be taken away then?
If necessary, we can take them away, yes.
It is almost like garden waste, remember, Danny, though.
No, I understand that, but I mean, communal bins are a big factor in the cleanliness of some of our estates in East Wren. And it was the last thing I would want is communal bins taken away.
Councillor O'Kane.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think this paper is, as you rightly say, the update paper to our previous discussions. I think we had asked that we consider the paper fully once we knew our financial position. We obviously went through a budget process. It was unanimously accepted at that budget process and unamended that we take this. What is, let's be honest, a difficult decision, but it is about, I think, where we are in terms of having to make financial choices. I think Mr. Cahill has quite clearly outlined that this service, the service as currently stands, is a very high level of service compared to other local authorities. That it costs money to run an effective and wide-ranging service. And the reality is that in order to maintain a service at that level, a charge is going to be introduced. I think the takeaway points I have from the paper are that it will increase the staffing element, it will improve the reliability of the vehicles we use, for example, by purchasing a new one. But I think it's important to put on the record this morning that the alternatives to charging would have been reductions in service. And that could have been reductions in the collection of bins, looking at, for example, the cycles of when bins are lifted. It could have been, an adverse impact on winter gritting routes, an adverse impact on the repairs budget for roads. So the reality is choices have to be made. It's a difficult choice, but I think it is the right one.
Thanks, Councillor Kane. No, absolutely. I think we all debated the issues in relation to it, but I think the fact that there is that unanimous support, everyone recognises the benefits that do come from this. And that's not just in increased employment across the area, employment of generally local people, but this service does continue to be improved as a very high service, and we will be able to continue doing that by putting this process in place. Councillor Lafferty.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I don't have too much to say because yourself, okay, and yourself, the salient point in this question, I don't like to do it, but from past experience, the public, when confronted with the reduction or the removal of a service, would rather pay a charge, which I would think in this case is a modest request. For 80 pence a week during the growing stage. Good deal. I've just come from Aberdeenshire, where my daughter lives in a comparable council to our own. But the service, the doorstep service there is, you get 2 bins and that's your lot. But it is not a decision we take lightly. I've had representation constituents, but I still feel that this is the way forward rather than the grim alternative we would face of losing the service entirely.
Thanks, Councillor Lafferty. No, I agreed. Councillor Bamford.
Can I ask Andy, either of the Andys, if people don't want to pay the extra for the brown bins, but obviously collection of food waste is statutory, can they request food caddies in order to collect their food waste?
Councillor Bamford, no, not at this point in time. Our service is based around wheel bins just now for occupational health reasons as much as anything. So it might be something we can look to in the future with a different level of service. But that would mean separating out the 2 streams of waste. So at this point in time, no.
Okay, thanks for that. If there are no further comments then, colleagues, are we happy then to note this paper regarding with the additional details and proposed scheme and approve the revised commencement date of the 5th of July for charging for garden waste scheme for East Renfrewshire Council? Are we happy to note those recommendations, colleagues? Excellent, thank you very much. Thanks very much, everyone, for your time this morning. Very much appreciated. I know some will be busier than others and want to utilise a bright sunny day.
Whatever for, I'm going to the park.
So thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, it's much appreciated. And again, thanks to all the officers for bringing forward the information at an extremely busy time for us. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too, Tony.
Bye now.